The next episodes of Thriving Construction come straight from Future Build. Huge thanks to Eco Cocoon. The space was great for chats, acoustics, and even better well-being.
For every 5 houses built in the UK, 1 house worth of material went to landfill and incineration. 1 in 5. 1 in 5. We've improved it. It's now about 1 in 6, 1 in 6.5, but not much.
I was going to say, that's not a big chunk.
No. And if you think housing in this country is built mainly by commercial entities, developers wanting to make money. Well,
And they're buying stuff. They're the big ones, aren't they?
Yeah, but they're buying stuff that gets thrown away. Why would you? So what I was trying to do is shine a light on that, because the construction sector forms over 63% of all the waste in the UK is from our construction sector. So I'm thinking, well, we can see we're house building, but not just house building. The construction industry is wasteful. It's maybe not today because of Trump's tariffs, but normally it is cheaper to throw material at building site to keep the labour force busy than it is for them to run out of material and then charge you for an afternoon's work when they haven't done anything. So sites tend to get materials thrown at them, and if on a Friday you're throwing a load of stuff in the skip, so be it. But when you look at the statistics on waste streams coming off construction sites, it's something like 14% of waste flow from a construction site is surplus material that's never been used. So, this is quite shocking. So we started with that and thought, right, what we'll do is working with the Mears Group, by the way, and this is set in Brighton on campus at the School of Art and Media. And we'll work with the local big contractor who services and maintains social housing in Brighton, because the city owns its own social housing and builds its own social houses. That's quite unusual. So the city helped us. Mears, who are the contractors, they helped us. They ran the site. They set up the site. They let us have a site agent for 18 months for nothing. And he ran the site. He knew about building. And along with him came 4 or 5 of their apprentices. But their apprentices will get called off to real work, as it were, normal work on occasion. So what we brought to it was students learning construction skills from the Brighton Metropolitan Technical College, as well as our own architecture and interior architecture students. They came together and we started building this thing made out of whatever waste material could get hold of. Initially, it was construction waste. So even when we found the site on campus, it's a raised bit of site at the corner of this big sort of quadrangle campus, the School of Art. We dug down thinking we were on chalk, where Brighton's on chalk. We're on a landfill site, so we're on a pile of rubbish. So we had to dig down, dig a big hole, and then we got chalk from a neighbouring site and compacted that, made a stable base out of waste chalk from someone else's site. Then we built up off of that, and we started, by the way, we were designing this thing to passive house standards. So we actually, the walls are all built off these what are called Perensil blocks, which are really expensive. They're spun glass with bitumen, so they're load bearing, they're damp proof, and they're a block. Really expensive, but the site was throwing them away. So we've got that, and that's passive house detail. That's to make sure you've got a sort of proper thermal wrap and no breaks and that. And then off that we built an unusual timber column and beam system, which was boxes, 400 by 400 wide box beams and box columns, made from 360 sheets of waste ply that we collected, plus offcuts of timber stud that we got out of stud partitions and stuff. But we really had to look for it. But once you start looking, people start giving. We'd get swamped with stuff as well. And luckily, Brighton City Council, they gave us a building that we could store stuff in, because some of it we were getting stuff. I'm thinking, I don't know what we'll do with that, but give me a couple of weeks or a couple of months to go. And we then partnered Freegal UK, which has 3.5 million subscribers now, but it's an online swapping agent, so like Freesite. And one of its founders was from Brighton. There's a woman called Kat Fletcher. And she started sourcing stuff for us. But she's a real sort of activist in the world of waste, trying to turn that linear system into a circular one. And so she said, why don't we, and this was 10 years ago, remember, she said, why don't we make people aware of the stuff they throw away every minute, every hour of every day? So basically a lot of plastic stuff. So we started asking for second-hand toothbrushes, old toothbrushes. We thought Brighton's got a population of 270,000. that means it's got at least 1 million toothbrushes in people's medicine cabinets and these. So we got about 1,000 toothbrushes, which wasn't very much. Then we got a call from a cabin service company from Gatwick Airport, someone that cleans out airliners when they land, when they've come from JFK in New York, gone across the Atlantic and landed in Gatwick. They said, we can get you toothbrushes. They got us 25,000 toothbrushes collected in 4 days.
4 days?
Yeah. So why did we do that? Because we then put it in the cavity of the walls. I mean, basically, the way the house is constructed is between these 400 by 400 ply collars was a gap of about 2.5 meters. And we just made these other ply boxes that were 400 deep, 900 wide, and then 2.5 meters high. And we filled them full of stuff to collect stuff. And this stuff had different reasons for being collected. Initially, it would have been just construction waste. It's not waste, it's valuable. But then with the toothbrushes, it was because the building's actually a teaching facility for young students from the university and beyond. The point of the toothbrush is saying, do you realize that if you think of the life cycle of this toothbrush, it's gone from being a valuable fossil fuel, from oil processed into plastic, processed into a toothbrush, put on an airplane, flown from New York to Gatwick, and then incinerated. Don't be the person that designs that thing. Design that process, decouple from that wasteful process. So the waste house completed has got about 250 stories associated with different materials and products. We made sure that from the outside it looked like a complete building. It looks like a black tiled building with, it looks like a house at the end of that. But, for example, when you go up to the black tiles and you have a look, they're carpet tiles. So the reason they're black is because it's the side that's stuck down to the floor normally, the black rubber, and the colourful side is on the other side, so you don't see that. So you've got this sort of black rubber facade. But even that, we wouldn't have put it on there if it hadn't passed a fire test. So we got building control at Brighton Waste City Council. They were heavily involved. They actually witnessed the fire tests we did with a blowtorch on these tiles. They didn't burn, they just smoked. I don't know why they don't burn, but they passed the fire test. So they're on the facade and they make the building look quite cool. It looks like a contemporary building. But when you go up to it, you're like, wow, what's that? And then you notice this black tile, whatever it is, external corner, it bends around it. Like, oh, it's floppy as well. So it's interesting because he's now 10 years old and the carpet tiles still look great. But since then, we've had other layers of stuff and other research projects. And that often involves our students. So, the first time we built this thing, it was a year on site, it was on budget, on time, built by over 360 students.
Thanks for watching to the end. I think that you'll like this, but before you do that, just make sure that you've commented and liked below, and also that you subscribed.